welcome back from the break. We are now going to start off with the session, and I'd like to hand over the session to Graham. Graham, you can start once you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Anisha. And just to remind you, we are going to take a few more questions towards the end of this session. This session is really an important one, and it's an important one for you personally, because whilst I'm talking about it from a business point of view, goal setting is something we can use in our personal lives to very great effect. So hopefully you can now see my screen. Module 14, creating performance measures. I'm going to talk to you about the whole theory and the realization of how goals, objectives, and targets can be used. A business tool called SMART Objectives, which you may be familiar with, but it's a very important thing to really understand in depth. How we devise a goal achieving strategy, the role and importance of key performance indicators, KPIs as they're known, how they can be linked into the company strategy or your family or business strategy, and then how we then use initiatives, a phrase I use and is used a lot in the terminology. Initiative is really an action plan or a program or a drive of some way, a campaign, if you like, that you can use to achieve these KPIs, goals, and targets. Now, let's do a quick poll. Let me gather some more information from you. Third poll for today, very simple. One question, two answers. Please tick either agree or disagree as to whether you like new tasks. Oh, this is an easy question, isn't it? I like to be challenged with new tasks. We just give this over a minute. Another 60 seconds, maximum 30 seconds. We may not need that long. It's going really well. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious as to whether this group today like new tasks and challenges or not. Okay, so I'm going to pause it there. I think we have a clear winner, a very clear winner. So let me just end the poll and you'll see the results. 87% of your group, this group, like to be challenged with new tasks. So this means people like setting goals because that's all a goal is. It's a task that you set yourself as a challenge. And this is why goal setting is used so much in our own personal lives and in businesses. Even if we don't call it goal setting, even if we don't think about it as setting a goal, it's something we want to do and we set about it as a new task. Let me explain in more detail. So stop this now, move that away. Goal setting is about visions. It's about ideas. It's about planning. It's about achieving a feeling of success. It's about having a strategy to achieving our goal. And a goal is very often what gets us motivated. That thought of how we will feel and what having or achieving the goal will do for us gets us, if you like, out of bed in the morning, gets us out of a chair, gets us doing things. Okay, so this is why goal setting is so important. Let me give you a context for this. Every year we have a thing for as long as I remember called New Year's resolutions, and you're supposed to set a series of goals for the year, goals for 2020. Now, the goals for 2020 could be things we'd like to have, things we'd like to achieve, places to visit, things to buy, things we want to change about ourselves or our lives. Absolutely. The challenge is many of us have these goals, these New Year's resolutions. Every year, it's the same goals. We don't achieve them. Why not? Well, it's because we maybe didn't want them enough. We didn't want them badly enough. Or maybe we didn't take that really difficult step of planning and action. So we're going to look at that because that's really important. Now, we've all had a setback in 2020. We've all had things that happen in the world we didn't expect. We've been prevented from doing things we normally do in most countries. So does that mean we can't achieve our goals? Not at all. We just have to have a different plan and we have to act in a different way. And maybe the goal might go back to 2021 or 2022. I mean, if you were a student taking exams this year, you might put them back 12 months because you've missed your studies or your lectures. It doesn't mean to say the goal isn't achievable, as you will see. We all have goals. We all set goals. If you've ever passed an exam, if you've ever saved up to buy something, we live in a world full of dreams come true. This amazing shopping mall, it was a dream of somebody. It was a vision in the architect's head, and then it became a reality. And it's full of dreams that people want to own and buy and achieve. And so this is what a goal is. It's anything at all, from making a wonderful meal to building a new career. And it's at the core of what we are and who we are as human beings. If you watch children playing in a playground, even like 4 or 5 years old, they will start to compete. They will try and race to the nearest tree faster. They will play games to achieve things. Okay, so this is an important part of psychology, and this is important if you're running or managing or working in a business too. Just before we look at the business area, here's something I would like to share with you. One of the questions earlier on was, should I focus on goals to improve my weaknesses or my strengths? Well, probably the answer is both, but if you have to prioritize, build your strengths, make sure your weaknesses do not hold you back, but your strengths will maximize your ability to achieve goals. Okay, so 3 goal areas are your personal life, your family, your friends, your personal situation, maybe your home, and your leisure activities. Other one is work, maybe your job, your career, your studies, your qualifications, and then self-development. These are things you'd like to improve or grow about yourself. Goals should be long, medium, and short term, maybe starting 10 years, 5 years out, and working backwards to having monthly and quarterly goals. What would I like to achieve today is a good question to ask yourself every single morning. What have I got to achieve today? What is my goal for the day? What have I got to make sure I've done before I go home or go to bed tonight? 3 to 5 goals in each area. You can have too many goals. This is one of the challenges. It's better to pick a few goals and focus on those. And we use the same psychology in a business or organization. This is the mnemonic or the acronym of SMART objectives, SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific means clear, understandable in a sentence or two. Measurable means how you will evaluate. What is the finish line? Is it clear? Achievable means you have the resources and the ability to do it without, massive effort, massive investment, or massive changes to your life or your business. Relevant means it's got to be important to you. And in a business, it means, does it fit with my mission, vision, and business objectives? Okay. Is it relevant to what we're doing as a company or an organization? Time bound. So this is a time scale and a deadline. With a long goal, you break it into a series of milestones. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine that I decide one of my goals for 2020 is to learn to speak Spanish. Now, is that a goal? No. It's an intention, it's a dream, it's a want, it's an objective, but it's not a smart objective. So let's try and make it into a smart objective. I want to be able to visit Spain, communicate in Spanish, and be understood in shops, hotels, and restaurants by December. Now, is that a smart objective? Let's think about it. Well, it's measurable because I can tell whether I can be understood. Is achievable? I could probably achieve that if I put my mind to it. It's relevant. Well, there might be a reason why I want to achieve the Spanish speaking I'm looking for. And that's the why question, by the way. Why do you want what you want? And this is the motivation, by the way. And the time bound, well, December. Well, it doesn't matter if it's February, if it's March. Now, I might be starting a new job in January where I need to speak Spanish. So that could be the reason. Maybe I want to pass an exam in Spanish. There's a metric. There's a clear measure. So make sure that the smart objectives are always processed for your goals. Now, in terms of developing a strategy, manage, focus, avoid, and limit. These are the 4 things to remember about goals. Manage short-term crises and problems. Clear away important and urgent tasks and goals. This allows you time to focus on the long-term strategic goals, which are important, but not always urgent. So a goal, this is often why people, by the way, don't always achieve their New Year's resolutions. It's because they're so busy in the day-to-day, they don't really make the time for the important but not urgent goals. Avoid distractions, interruptions, and I'm going to add a third item on that list, is less important activities. Okay, less important activities. And limit time-wasting activities. So let me put this in the context of learning Spanish. Now, I need to be able to delegate or somehow get rid of all the little short-term things that I do, important and urgent. And I need to make time every day or every other day to sit down with my player, my MP3 player, or with my books, or with my online tutor, and practice my Spanish. Let's imagine I'm going to do an hour a day and 2 hours on Fridays. Now I have to make time for that. There's something else I would have done that I'm not going to do then. So maybe I do less social media, or I turn the television off, or I don't spend so much time playing sport or watching sport or playing with the children or talking to my partner. But I have to find something that I avoid and limit to make time to do the most important thing. So this is the secret of goal setting, is you need to devise a strategy to make the time to achieve it. In the end of the day, the difference between people who achieve things and don't achieve things, well, it could be down to ability. It could be down to their skills, their knowledge, and their talents. But it could also be down to how they apply themselves, how hard they work, the sacrifices they make, and the way they focus their time. The more I study this, the more I realize how important the last element is. So in a business, in an organization, as a team, as an individual working in a company, where do you spend your time? How do you focus on the goals and objectives of the business you're working on? Let's examine this in more detail. A goal might be to generate some new customer growth. A goal might be to improve the close ratio of qualified leads. This is one of the sales goals we were talking about yesterday. The goal might be to establish your business as an industry expert in some niche market. You develop a strategy. This is the overall high level strategic initiative. And then you work down the details and the tactics. Now, the tactics need to be activity based and they should have a measure. So, for example, where it's got search engine marketing, well, maybe we want to have a goal of appearing on page one of certain searches on certain search engines, whether that's Google or Yahoo or Bing or Ask Jeeves or whatever it is. So we have a tactic for doing that. And that turns into a goal, which is a much higher level goal. So you can see this is called cascading the goal, right? So the strategy should have a number or a measure with it, which is the smart element. But then we work down to the how to. And by the way, in the SMART acronym of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bounded, the way you know something's achievable is if you can create a clear action plan. So if somebody comes to you and says, I'd like to achieve an improved close ratio for my qualified leads, or I want to become an industry expert in my field, you say, great, that's a fantastic goal. When do you want to achieve it by? Why is it important? How will you know when you've achieved it? And now this is the big question, the next one. How are you going to get there? How are you going to do it? If they have a very clear answer to that, you know the goal is achievable. So when you set a goal for yourself, take out a keyboard, take out a paper and pen, and write down all the steps you need to achieve to get there. If you can list the steps and they're doable for you, the goal is real. The only question is, do you want it badly enough to work hard enough at it? So that's goal setting. I'm going to come back to that at the end. Now, let's look at KPIs. This is a very common phrase that's used all the time. KPI, KPI, KPI. Every time I'm in a management meeting, we're talking about something and somebody will say, hey, we need some KPIs for this. Okay, let's work out some key performance indicators. And we often, as you can see on the blue picture there, will turn it into a dashboard. We have dials and sliders and numbers and charts and graphs. And that means it can be very easy to understand visually. Key performance indicators. It's something that business people have stolen from scientists. As science has, if you like, been used more in business, whether it's artificial intelligence or data analysis or complex management models, they've brought with it this key performance indicator. Let me explain how and why they're used. Before I do that, though, let's have a quick poll. Let's go to poll 4. Just got 2 more of these today. When we were talking about the strengths and weaknesses, this question says, do you have a clear idea of your own personal strengths and weaknesses? Do you have a clear idea? Yes, definitely. Yes, mostly. No, not really. No, not at all. So tick the one that you think That's a very broad question. I understand that. And you might know your strengths, but not know your weaknesses. Okay, a few more seconds. Please tick one of those 4 and I will share the results with you. Okay, so let's pause there. Once again, there's a clear winner, and it's what I would have expected. And that, yes, most of you believe you have a clear idea of your own personal strengths and weaknesses. Now, just to be sure on this, if you want to check, ask a friend, family member, or work colleague who you know and trust, and ask them what they think your top 3 strengths are and the top 3 improvement areas. No one likes to have weaknesses, right? So, areas you could improve, right? Alpha and omegas. What are you good at? What could you do better? And listen to what they say. Don't argue with them. Just say, okay, what makes you say that? What makes you say that? It's really important you know that. Always play to your strengths and overcome your weaknesses. You're never going to be big and famous because of your weaknesses, but you will be successful because you're playing to your strengths. Okay, let me give an example. I have 2 children. One is a lawyer and the other one is a barrister. One is a solicitor, and a barrister represents people in court. One is very studious, calm, huge attention to detail. The other one is argumentative, difficult, and single-minded. 2 completely different personalities, both in absolutely the right jobs because they play to their strengths. If they swap roles, it would be a disaster and they wouldn't like their jobs. But because they've matched their strengths to what they're good at and they've got better at those things, I asked my daughter, who is the barrister, I said, what do you like about being a barrister? And she said, where else could you get paid to be difficult and have arguments? Point, right? So always play to your strengths. Very, very important. Now, at some point, you need to measure your performance. And it needs to be an accurate assessment. And that's what a KPI is. A quantifiable measure of a company uses to determine how well it's meeting its operational and strategic goals. A sales team might use sales revenue. How many sales have we made? A customer support team might use the average length of time a customer is on hold, or how many calls are converted or solved on the first attempt. A marketing group will look at the contribution of marketing in terms of how many leads we generate per dollar spent. A human resources will look at employee engagement. So, for example, if I did an employee survey as an HR manager, a key performance indicator would be how many people completed it. And then what were the scores on the various attitudes and the questions on the form. Other areas of the business will look at efficiency and productivity. One of the biggest challenges many organizations face across the world is productivity measures. How we can produce more of what we do for less input, whether that's time, money, people, and so on. So if you're an insurance company processing insurance claims and you have 400 people and process 4,000 claims a day, how can you process 5,000 claims for 3,000 people? So this is a key performance indicator. And it's always the indicators we focus on and then work backwards in terms of how we can improve them. Why does a business need KPIs? Well, there's a maxim that says, and this was a Ken Blanchard book called The 1 Minute Manager, what you measure gets done. What you inspect, always inspect what you expect. More recently, bringing it up to date, John Doerr, who was a Google consultant and a Google employee, brought out a book called Measure What Matters. And you need KPIs because people do what they're measured on. If you measure people on the right things, they'll do the right things. So here are 5 reasons. It measures and monitors the company's health. It's useful to measure progress and make visible the efforts and the improvements that people are making and businesses are making. It allows you to stay on track. It's quite encouraging when your key performance indicators are moving in the right way. It's a good way to solve problems and tackle opportunities. And finally, a KPI allows you to analyze patterns over time. So if you're measuring a certain metric, let's say sales per day, you will begin to understand the different variations per day, per week. You can correlate and cross map those to things like weather and social changes and all sorts of different things. So patterns can be easier to spot when you're using a KPI. Aligning the KPI to the company strategy is, of course, as you would expect, very important. So when you've got those high-level goals and objectives, when you have your business strategy, you have to work them down into something that's measurable. This is often known by the development of the John Doerr model of the OKR. OKR, objective key result. So you have an objective to provide awesome client support with proactive account management. Now, you will notice that isn't a SMART objective. It doesn't need to be, so long as it has KPIs. And it would need to have probably around 3 to 5 good key results or KPIs. I remember many years ago when I was doing this and I was learning from a business manager who was very, very good at this. And we used to use this phrase all the time: just have 3 measures, just measure 3 things, just do 3 things. And it would allow you to really focus on the 3 most important KPIs. I despair sometimes when I see like job descriptions or performance contracts, and they have like 12 KPIs or key result areas. And it's just too many. You just have to focus on the top 3 KRs or KPIs. The second example, our workforce has the skills they need to excel. Well, KPI, percentage of employees who complete 3 account trainings semi-annually. If you can measure it, you can improve it, it gets done. So always translate the initial big picture strategy and vision into a series of goals, and then from that, the KPIs and the key result areas you want. Now, as a business, as a team, as a family, as an individual, how do you create the strategies and initiatives that facilitate people in achieving targets? Well, the first thing is you encourage people to dream big, turn those dreams and visions into clear, specific goals, and then produce and start taking action. So produce action plans and begin to implement them. There is a phrase we use in goal setting called a stretch goal. A stretch goal is something which is not impossible to achieve, but challenging. And we all agreed that 89% of us like challenging new tasks. So every month, every quarter, every year, set yourself some stretch goals. If it involves other people, make sure that you use time together to plan and develop those ideas. Communicate clearly, produce action plans, and focus just on 3 to 5 main goals. So let's go back to the theme we had on the first day, which was project management. And you have a problem with the project. It looks like it's going to be 3 weeks late than you anticipate, right? So you've got a goal you're going to miss. So the discussion happens to have, how can we get the project back on track? How can we hit the deadline that we've been given or have agreed, or get as close to it as possible? So we've set a big, audacious, ambitious goal in achieving the project on a certain date, and now we're struggling to achieve it. So what we need to do is to review the action plans and come up with some new ideas and initiatives to get the goal back on track. So this idea of initiatives, I can best describe it as an initiative as an action or a group of actions to resolve or achieve a goal. So, a group of actions. So, what we could do is maybe take out some of the functionality or some of the activities from the project and put them into a phase two and still achieve the main project target. And would need to discuss whether that's feasible or indeed allowable by the stakeholders of the project. These ideas, you don't have to own the idea. You might own the goal, but the ideas can come from many other people. So there is a magic in goal setting, which I'm going to sound like some kind of crazy person now. But if you've ever heard of books like The Law of Attraction and all these ideas of the magnetism of the universe, okay, I am sounding like a crazy person now. So what happens is if you set yourself a goal, if you say, how can we get this project on time? How can I get this project on time? How can I get this project on time? Then somebody will say something, or you'll come up with an idea, or you'll read this blog site, or you'll listen to the radio, and somebody will come on and you say, hey, that's it. What, I could do that. And so there is this concept that ideas and people and things are given to you and become part of your reality because you're on this goal focused track. It's really kind of amazing. And I have numerous examples of this happening. So always make sure that you focus your goals really clearly and specifically. You communicate with people you trust and involve everybody who is in the goal to help you achieve it. And this is why businesses are so effective as organizations, because businesses, and I'm talking commercial companies here, whose goals involve making profit, making money, attracting customers, making sales, and all the other things that go with it, like marketing and controlling costs, they're very focused. They're really, really focused. But then so, of course, are sports organizations like football teams or theatre groups. They want to put on a production of a concert, of a play. They have a goal of selling a certain number of tickets over a certain number of nights, having a standing ovation, getting great reviews from the critics. These are all goals, and they're all key performance indicators. And this is a natural way of setting about achieving better and bigger results for ourselves, for our businesses, for our teams, for our company, and for our families. Now, the way you get promoted in a business, the way you get promoted in a job is by two things. One is to make your boss look good to their boss. Now, there's a little bit of humor in that, but not much. Think for a moment of the opposite. If you make your boss look bad to their boss, that doesn't normally lead for a good day, okay? Doesn't end well, as they say. The second, and more importantly, and perhaps slightly more serious way, is by constantly setting yourself goals to improve yourself, to add value, to learn things, and to deliver results for your business. If you gain a reputation for somebody who sets goals and achieves them, you will be promoted, given more responsibility, and move forward in both the quality of the work you do and the position in the organization. That's almost impossible to not achieve those things. But you have to come up with the goals yourself in many cases. Let's look at this in more detail. Goals are often handed down to individuals. Your manager will set you goals and objectives for your job. He or she will be set goals and objectives by their manager. The board of directors will set goals and objectives for the chief executive and their officers. So this all cascades down. However, if you become somebody who is a goal getter, who can set and achieve goals where they can see an improvement, you'll be in a different league to everybody else. If you become skilled at creating key performance indicators or setting about smart objectives and translating vague goals into smart goals, and then explaining them in a way and come up with action plans, you will begin to create value for yourself and your business. I was reminded of a story when I was putting these slides together. Many years ago, I was working for a company which is, I should say, an industrial laundry. They do laundry for hotels and restaurants and factories, and they had 550 staff, a very substantial business, thousands and thousands of items of laundry every single day. The vans would arrive, unload. Later that day, they'd load up and deliver it back to the hotels and restaurants and offices for their uniforms and tunics. Unfortunately, the father who owned and ran the business died, and the two sons took it over. And for a year or so, the business struggled. The father was a very charismatic leader. He had a very definite purpose. He knew he managed every part of that business. The two sons were very clever and very able managers, but the business lost its way. They lost some customers. The staff productivity went down. They increased more costs, and it became a little bit less of a professional business than before. And one of the frustrations is that they had the same staff, they had the same products, they had the same machinery. Why wasn't it working quite as well? And what it came down to was the way that goals were communicated in the business, the sense of purpose, and the key performance indicators. You see, the key performance indicators and the goals were still there. They still had targets. They still had the measures of how many items of laundry they had to produce or clean an hour or a day. But nobody really cared whether they did it or not. It was just kind of, okay, we didn't do so many today, maybe tomorrow. So nobody was going, how can we improve this? This isn't working very well. What can we do to achieve our goals? And this ideally comes from the top. But it doesn't come from the top. It comes from the people who own the KPI. If you're the person who is responsible for one aspect of the business and you have a clear KPI, make sure it's delivered and make sure it's exceeded. This is the magic of goals and KPIs. Think about this. If you talk to a friend you hadn't seen for a while, and they said, how's your job going? Imagine you're doing a busy job in a manager role or any job at all, and say, how's it going? And you think for a minute and go, yeah, okay, I think. Okay, you think? Now, if your job has clear KPIs, clear goals and objectives, you will know whether it's on course or off course, whether it's going well on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being fantastic and 1 being terrible. And we all want to live on the other side of 5. We want a job that's going a 5, a 6, a 7, or 8, or 9, or a 10. And if it's only a 5 or a 6, our next goal is to make it a 7, 8, or a 9. And that's what goal setting and KPIs do for people. So let's go through a few do's and don'ts when you're setting SMART goals or KPI, key performance indicators. Let's go through the don'ts first. Number 1 is do not allow yourself or others to achieve vague goals, or indeed vague habits, weak habits. The best goals become habits, by the way. The best action plans become habits. I'll come on to that in a moment. Don't make team or company-wide goals in small silos. A silo is a discrete unit that doesn't communicate with another silo. You need to have that interaction and synergy between teams and departments. This is where the balanced scorecard comes in. So the senior manager who is responsible for implementing the balanced scorecard will make sure there's no conflict. If the financial goals are to reduce costs by 10% and the marketing goal is to increase advertising by 10%, there is going to be a conflict. So those two departments need to communicate so that the funding and the increase in advertising is paid for by a saving in some other aspect of marketing or some other saving in the business. Don't set unachievable goals that will lead to frustration either for you or your team. A big unattainable goal is demotivating. Nobody thinks it's possible. They don't try hard, and every day is frustrating. Better to start small, achieve a goal that has a 50-50 chance of success, achieve that and move forward. Don't go after unattractive or irrelevant goals, goals that are not relevant to your main business objective or are important to you and your team. They are distracting. Don't expect perfection and don't expect the goals to go perfectly. There will be mistakes, there will be delays, there will be frustrations. Goals are not always a straight line, and you need to persist often in the application of your action plan. And don't lose sight of the big picture. Don't lose sight of the big picture. Imagine you're going to run a marathon. There's a goal. Talked about this the other day. Run a marathon. Gee, that's a long way, right? And you're training and you're getting up every morning, 3 days a week at 6 o'clock. And it's the last thing you feel like doing, getting out of bed and running 10K. So what do you think about? Do you think about your nice warm bed? Do you think about the discomfort and pain when you first start running? Do you think about the boredom? Do you think about the rain outside and the cold? Or do you think about how good you're going to feel when you pass that finishing line in 6 months' time in your target time of 4 hours, 30 minutes? Arms above your head, you've run a marathon. That's the vision. So don't lose sight of the vision. Let's do some positives. Okay, so do be specific in setting your goals. We have the SMART, the specific, the measurable, the achievable, the realistic, and the time bounded. That is really, really strong. But there are other goal setting models. I like the why, what, when, and how model. This is easy. What do you want to achieve? Why do you need it? When do you want to get it by? And how are you going to get there, right? Make sure it's measurable, you can tick it off, and it's got a clear success criteria. Set a whole bunch of 3 or 4 KPIs for your goal, if nothing else. Do include your team members in your company goals. Communicate them, put up posters, send out newsletters, emails, regular updates. It's communication again. It's so important. People like to feel they're making progress on their goals. You'll often see this in a sales office. There'll be a whiteboard at one end, and every day the manager comes in, he writes the sales for that day on the board, and at the bottom is a running total. He takes a pen, or takes a rubber, I should say, he wipes the board clean and writes the new total at the bottom. And next to it is the target. So everyone can see the visible goal progress and involve everybody in that. Okay. Now, I mentioned the word stretch goals. Set goals that stretch and challenge you and your team and your department. And if you're not in a management position yet, when you are, you will have goals and objectives you have to achieve. That's not a stretch goal. That's the ticket price to get in the door, right? That's what you have to do. A stretch goal is a goal you set above that. So maybe you want to achieve over a particular target, or you want to improve the productivity, or come up with some new ways of working, or the results, or minimize mistakes. So a stretch goal is something which is difficult, is challenging, but will ultimately be rewarding. So that's a stretch goal. And by the way, those are what motivates people very often. It's just a little bit more challenging. Now, make sure the goals are important to you and your team. Make sure they're relevant and they relate to your strategic planning. So, for example, if one day you would like to achieve a certain qualification in your life, or visit a certain country, or own a house, or live in a particular region of the world, okay, the goal that you choose today should lead you towards that initiative. So, why would I want to learn Spanish? Well, maybe one day my goal, my dream is to live in Spain. Now, I don't know when, I'm not quite sure how, but that's my goal. So, learning Spanish is relevant to that goal. So, make sure that you have this linkage, this chain effect for your goals. Always set a time frame. They say that a goal without a deadline is just a dream. It's almost you're pretending you don't want it. When you put a timeline in it, and you put a deadline in it, your brain kicks in. Also, when you give a deadline to somebody else, you make sure it gets done. Deadlines drive decisions and actions better than almost anything else. And finally, do be flexible and prepared to adjust goals when necessary. A goal can sometimes become out of date. It can no longer be relevant. It becomes less important than it used to be. So let's imagine that you run a hotel chain. You're the general manager of a Hilton hotel, and you've got 400 bedrooms. And because of the coronavirus, the 400 bedrooms have remained empty for 12 weeks. All your goals about this year's sales targets and occupancy levels and productivity and profitability and restaurant sales are gone, right? Your goal now is how you're going to maintain your staff morale, how are you going to staff your hotel and return people to work safely, how are you going to reassure and re-welcome customers back, how are you going to meet the regulations and guidelines around safe distancing and so on and so on. So a whole set of new goals are now relevant to your business in the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, sure, you're going to get back to worrying about how many guests eat in a restaurant every evening. But for now, there are more important goals. The world we live in not only changes, but it changes faster than ever before. These are obviously political, economic, social, and technological changes. The speed of development in technology is increasing all the time. Many of the jobs that we do today, many of the jobs we did a few years ago, are now replaced by technology, artificial intelligence, computer technology, streamlining things, faster, quicker, better machines. So always make sure that your goals, for example, align to things that you want to achieve. So if you're in your 20s and you want to keep working until your 60s, you are going to have to retrain your skills 3 or 4 times in the next 30 or 40 years, because we're not going to be using the same version of software as we have now. The computer technology will change, the smartphones. The job we do might be replaced by a computer. So we have to keep looking at ourselves as opportunities and seeing how we can improve and challenge ourselves to set new goals to meet those challenges. If you're not able to use the internet, you're less valuable to an organization. Now, clearly, all of you can use the internet. Otherwise, you would not be listening or watching this video and this training course today. So the fact is what is your skill level in that? Set yourself a goal of not just learning a new technology, of becoming a master in it, becoming an expert in it. And this will allow you to add value. So when it comes to SMART goals or any kind of goal setting, you will use it in your job, whatever that job is. you will have KPIs and important indicators. But don't just save it for your work. Make sure you bring it into your personal lives and your families too. I think one of the most important things you can do for your friends and family is to teach them about goals and share with them the ideas of a SMART goal and how to create a clear action plan and keep a vision in your mind of what you will achieve and how you will achieve it. What will you see? What will you hear? What will you experience or feel when you achieve your goal? And that's, by the way, one of the key things we know about people who are good at setting goals is they create literally a vision or a little movie in their head with all the sights and sounds, like they're watching some huge 80-inch UHD television, and they can see everything moving, and that's their vision and that's their goal. And they work backwards from that to what they need to do today. That's what you need to do. Now, let's quickly summarize some of these ideas about goal setting. So, you need to be ambitious, for sure. There's nothing wrong with having a big goal. Sometimes it will really energize you, and sometimes you'll think, I'm never going to achieve that. Just be ready for those two thoughts. You need to work at a goal, that's for sure. You need to schedule your time to make the goal happen. You need to have the success measures. You need to take action almost on a daily basis. If you set yourself a goal to learn or improve or do something, the idea you want to have every day is, what have I done today towards my goal? Always keep your feet on the ground, as they say, and keep a sense of realism. Be realistic. If I set myself a goal of becoming a brain surgeon, it's not going to happen. I faint at the sight of blood. It isn't realistic. You know, a lot of people would die if I was a brain surgeon. Right? It's not one of my key strengths. It's not a weakness I'm prepared to overcome either. So be realistic. There's plenty of really good things and great ways you can contribute to an organization and to yourself. You just have to keep your feet on the ground about what's important and why it's important to you. Now, make a plan. It doesn't matter how you make a plan. It means writing it down, ticking it off. It means doing a big work breakdown schedule, like we said. It can be a spreadsheet. It can be a long document. It can be a journal. It can be all sorts of things. It could be a business plan. If your goal is to set a business up, write a business plan. Find a template on the internet. Ask your accountant, ask your bank manager to send you a template. Write down your goal. And in doing so, the goal will begin to shape. Show it to others. Ask them what their thoughts are. And they will make suggestions about how, they ask you questions that will give you ideas to improve it. Now, these ideas on this side here fit with this idea of schedule. And I want to give you a thought that is unique to goal setting in a way. In time management, there was a phrase that says, always prioritize your schedule. So you have a list of 10 things to do. Well, you're going to order them in priority, which is the most important, which is the second most important, which is the third most important, and so on, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. A better way of doing it is to schedule your priorities. So don't prioritize your schedule, schedule your priorities. So when you look at your day, from whenever you wake up to whenever you finish, put in the 2 or 3 main priorities of activity, actions, or areas of work you need to achieve. And then fit everything else around it. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine that you are a credit controller in a business, and your job is to call customers and persuade them to pay their overdue invoices and collect money. Now, you need to do this very politely and very pleasantly because they're regular customers. And if you upset them, they'll go and buy their products somewhere else. Now, the challenge is always not having enough time because as a credit controller, you have to produce reports and invoices and statements and deal with questions from salespeople and customers who've lost their invoice or there's a mistake on it, yada, 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 yada. So how do you make time to do the really important task of collecting overdue debt? Well, the first thing you do is you create a KPI. What is the percentage of bad debts or percentage of payments? How long does it take the average customer to pay an invoice over the last 90 days? And let's imagine that you calculate, or in the last 12 months maybe, and you have a figure of, let's say, we have 8% of bad debt and the average payment KPI is 60 days. Now you've got a baseline. You set a goal and you say in the next 3 months, I want to reduce the percentage bad debt from 8 to 60%, 6%, which is probably about achievable, quite tough, but achievable. And I want to reduce the average payment period from 60 down to 45. And by the way, in this thinking, it should be 30. This is the contractual term with the client. All invoices must be paid after 30 days. But in reality, people are late paying, they forget, or whatever. So it's 60 days. But your target, your goal is 60 days into 45 days in 3 months. And you put a big poster up on the wall. That's your goal. Ta-da! Now what? You've got your goal, you got a KPI. Now you need to do it. And you decide to do it the first thing every morning. You come in the morning, you get your coffee, your tea, you get organized, you check your emails, and then you turn off your phone, you turn off your email, and you spend 2 hours phoning and emailing and texting clients to say, hello, I'm calling from our accounts department. I just want to see when this invoice that's now outstanding will be paid. And you phone them all. And after 2 hours, a timer goes off and you stop and you get back to all the other things which are less of priority, still need to be done, but not as important as the ones that you've already achieved that day. So schedule your priorities. And if the priority is to hit those goals and KPIs, do those first. Make time for the actions that achieve them, and you will make a path to success. Measure how you're going every single day, every single hour. Measure progress regularly. And if you need to, have a follow-up mechanism. Produce, in this case, a weekly report, maybe a daily report, and keep track of your progress of goals. This can be motivating, of course, but it can occasionally be demotivating. So if you are off track and your goal is not on the right level, then adjust it. Maybe reset the goal slightly, or go back and look at your plan A and make it a plan B or a plan C. So these are just some of the thoughts when it comes to goal setting. It's an absolute life skill. I cannot imagine a situation, a job, a person where goals are not applicable. Even if you choose to retire, I was running a management course a few years ago. I was in Abu Dhabi somewhere, and there was a lot of senior executives on the course. It's actually it's a course on balanced scorecard, and 2 or 3 of the senior managers said, "Actually, Graham, this is very interesting, but to be honest, I'm retiring in 3 months' time, so I'm not sure this is going to be useful to me." And I said, "Well, then maybe not all of it, but what are your goals for your retirement?" And this one guy said, "Well, I don't know, really, just going to take it easy, just enjoy my retirement." Okay. And the other guy said, no, I've got loads of goals. He said, I'm going to buy a small boat. I'm going to buy a little dinghy. I want to go sailing. I'm going to take up renovating my property. I have all these things I want to do around my house. I've never been able to have time to. I want to spend more time with my son. He's a big golfer, so I want to go out playing golf, right? That's like, I goes, wow, right? And that's the thing. Even if you retire, you still have goals. And I do know from people who retire with no goals, they get very bored very, very, very quickly. So make sure that you set yourself goals. And it doesn't, by the way, one last point before I ask for questions. And I see we've got a lot of questions here. So I'm going to give a bit more time to questions now. One last thought about goals. The psychology of goals is that achieving a goal doesn't really matter how big or amazing the goal is. The buzz that the endorphins you get, bing, from achieving the goal exist in even the simplest and the smallest goal. Even cooking a nice meal, learning a new recipe, learning how to juggle, something that you set yourself as a goal, you practice it every night for 6 weeks, you can do juggling tricks for your friends. It's very satisfying. So I hope this session has, I'm going to come back on a few points in a moment, but I hope this has hit your, if you like, interest, not just in terms of professional business skills, but also how you use goals already. This is not new. We all do this. But it's now how you can do more of it on purpose, and importantly, share it with others. Now let's set the last goal for the day. Here's a quick question I'd like you to think about and give me an answer. And then I'm going to go to the Q&As. The question is, how often do you set goals for your work or your personal life? Once a year, once a few months, occasionally, or never? Okay, so it's going well. Okay, interesting. Not quite the answer that I expect, but I'll share this with you in a moment. Do keep voting. How often do you set goals? Once a year, every few months, occasionally, sometimes, or never, not at all? Okay, so just 15 seconds left. If you've not quite voted, click one of those 4 options. All right, so let's get over that. So let's pause there. Now, let me share the results with you. So 45% of you, about half, do it occasionally. 30%, a third of you, do it every few months. Some do it once a year, and some don't do it at all. Now, some people do goal setting without even knowing it's goal setting. They have an idea, they have a thought, they have a dream, there's something they really want to do. I'd love to go on holiday this year. Well, I can't afford it. Oh, well, let's find a way. Okay. So this is a goal setting process. My encouragement to you is to regularly set goals and review them every week or month. Where am I doing? What are my goals? Do remember there is a recall session, but just before I finish on goal setting, I'm going to go over to Q&A in a minute. So fire off any questions you want to ask me about KPIs, goal setting, SMART objectives, or indeed balanced scorecards and strategic management. The 2 things you can do to make goal setting easy and more achievable is, number 1, write the goals down. Just short goals, put them on a Post-it note, put them on the bathroom mirror, make sure that they are clear and specific, but just simple goals. And the second thing is to visualize your goal. Daydream. daydream. Think about the goal as an image, as a movie, as a picture. If you want to go on holiday this year, right, I'm not sure how you're going to fly anywhere, but we'll worry about that later. Visualize yourself in whatever city or location you want to go to. See yourself there in your mind and then work backwards to achieve it. So write your goals down and spend time daydreaming. And that, by the way, is exactly what your chief executive will do when he or she is creating the 5-year plan for your business. Okay, they make it up and write it down, and it becomes their goals and objectives. So, good poll. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that with me. So I'm going to stop my screen now. I'm going to hand this back. I'm going to invite Anisha to dip in the list of questions and share a few. And maybe if we have time, some of you can share them live, can speak them out as well. I'm not sure if we're able to do that, but Anisha, are you there?
Yes, yeah, I'm here. And okay. Yeah, probably because we have a lot of time left today, we'll see if we can have a few participants who can ask questions to you directly.
Yep, so, that'd be
great. Okay, so let me see what I have here. Okay, so this question came in from Pizat Khan, and he wants to know, how do you identify your goals in the purview of vision and mission statement?
Okay, how do you fit the goals in? Well, it's the third phase of the process. So let's imagine that my personal mission would be to be an engineer. That's what I'm good at. I love engineering. My vision is to be working in a senior role in a big engineering company, managing major engineering projects. That's my vision for where I want to be in 10 or 20 years' time. My goal today is to get a particular job or learn a particular technology or gain a qualification or get experience of a particular area or gain promotion. So I have this goal which leads me to my big vision, my big goal, my long-term goal, and it fits with my mission. So the goals should grow out like a tree grows out of fertile ground. That's the best way of doing it. If nothing else, be driven by your instinct. What do you really enjoy doing? What would you love to spend more time at? What are you really good at? And a combination of being good at something and enjoying it is a good way of setting a goal. So ask yourself, where do you want to be in 10, 20, 30 years' time? And then work back as to a goal for the next 2 years. That's one of the thoughts I would share with you. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
Yeah. Right. So the next question I have is from Hussein Almo Sahib, and he wants to know, if you fail to achieve your goals, what is the first thing to review, your plans or the goals itself?
Oh, that's a good question. What's the first thing to review if you don't get your goal straight away? I would review the plan, I think. If the goal is important and the goal is set for you by a manager or by somebody, I would look to learn the lessons for next time. All right. So let's look at simply if let's go back to my very simple analogy of learning Spanish. It gets to December, I still can't speak Spanish. Well, the goal is still important to me. I still want to speak Spanish. So let's look at why I didn't do it. Well, I still didn't prioritize it. I didn't make the time. My Spanish teacher wasn't very good. Except it was harder than I thought it was. I was too unrealistic with the level of language. I don't know. So I'd look at the method before I let go of the goal. There is sometimes when you have to let go of the goal and say, no, that goal is too big or that's too unrealistic for the timescales. But let's go back to the action plan and the methodology I'm using. I think that would be my advice, is and do that by checking in with the goal regularly. But there comes a point where the goal is no longer important, or it was too big a goal. Yeah, that's a point there. Definitely, definitely. In business goals, by the way, if I had a team and I set them an annual sales target, I would of course measure that target every month, and I would know by the end of the third or fourth month whether we were in trouble for that year or whether things are going well. I don't change the goal for the year, but what I do change is the way they're working, their methodologies. Maybe I look at different ways of advertising or promoting. I look at their sales techniques. I look at the customers, the way we're pricing it. But I do not want to change the goal, because the goal is linked to the strategic goals of the business. And if your company is owned by private shareholders, that's one thing. But if you're a public company and people invest on like a stock market, if you don't hit a target, the share price drops, and it can knock millions off the price of the shares. And you'll get calls from the chairman, the chief executive, and saying, "What are you doing in your team?" Right? And actually, you can overachieve. I once had a sales team, and we produced 8% higher sales for the year than we'd forecast. I was called to a committee, and I had to spend half a day explaining why I had overachieved the sales, because it was a problem, because the market, the share price, went down because they thought we were not running our business professionally. So if you have a sales target, if you have a business goal, don't change the goal until you've really, really worked hard to change the method you're using to achieve the goal. And I would apply the same thinking in your own personal life as well. Definitely. Good. Okay. I think that's that question. I like that question. Very good. You're thinking very deeply about this. This is great to see as well. Any more questions or live answers you want me to look at there, Anisha?
Yeah, so we'll probably take a couple of live questions. So, guys, if you want to ask a question to Graham directly, please raise your hand. I'm going to give you access to talk. So, I have Ibrahim who's raised his hand. Ibrahim, I'm going to give you access to talk. So, you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
Okay, hello everyone. Am I audible?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Hear you fine. Yes, nice to hear you.
So thank you, Mr. Graham, for your interesting session. I just have an idea, or maybe a question I want to know your opinion about. Is that, do you think that organizations and businesses should focus also on, rather than only achieving questions, but also on like preparing their staff for failure, and like teaching them how to accept failure?
Yeah, that's wow, that's an interesting question. Should we prepare our staff for dealing with failure and setbacks? Yeah, I think we should. I think we should, because it's as natural as the sun coming up in the day and going down at night. We, all of us, experience things that we don't like: failures, setbacks, difficulties, problems. I've often run sessions on problem solving, because I think that's so important. I think failure, the way I look at failure, is just feedback. I think that's the thing we have to make people realize, is if you didn't achieve your sales goal for a year, it's just feedback that what you were doing isn't working, or it was the wrong goal or something. So I definitely think we should teach your staff on how to dust themselves off when things go wrong and things don't work, and how to get back to the plan. And by the way, it's something that people often teach themselves, or they gain from the role models in their family or their friends. We've, all of us, I'm sure, had a teacher or someone who's inspired us. And I think if you, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And if you can't get your company to run a training course on that, maybe you as an individual can help and share these ideas with other people. One of the things I love doing is reading biographies of successful people or famous people, racing drivers and business people and television and actors and so on. And one of the things that's so true in all these different fields, and whether they're also religious people as well, is they've all had years and years of setbacks and struggles and things that didn't work very well, and they've just managed to overcome them and keep working forward. So I do think that's a really, I think it's called resilience, they call it. I think it's a really important skill. Yeah, it's a very good point, Ibrahim. Thank you for raising that. Excellent, excellent. A couple more questions, please.
Okay.
Anisha, if you can. Yes.
This is Nick. So I'm going to be allowing Khalid next to go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm bringing it right now. Khalid, you're on right now.
Okay, Khalid, hello.
Oh, you appear to be on mute, Khalid. Just so you know.
Nope.
All right, I think I will move on to the next person, I guess.
Okay, we'll come back to Khalid if he switches himself back on there.
Yeah, no problem. Osama, I am bringing you on right now. So Osama, you can go ahead and speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Everyone. I just have one simple question. Is what should I stick with my plan if I just hit my goal for 1 year? If I hit it before, should I stick and do nothing, or do planning for next year, or do more goals for this year?
Okay, good question. So what should you do if you've achieved your goal? Should you do nothing? Should you wait? Or should you set more goals? That's a good thought. Well, first of all, I would give yourself a pat on the back and say congratulations on achieving your goal. And that always is a good thing. And I want to answer this question in context of your staff or your family. If they achieve your goal, you need to celebrate that. You need to say fantastic job and make them enjoy that success. But if you think back to the poll we asked of everybody, with 2,000 people and a good majority voted, and 89% of people like a challenge, a new task. There's a wonderful quotation that says, all we need in life is something to get enthusiastic about. And so I would, having achieved one goal, I would then go on and achieve another goal and another goal. Make sure it's a stretch and it's a little more difficult next time, but it's still moving you forward. It's still something which is difficult, a little bit difficult. We like things that we have to kind of really apply ourselves to, which are more and more difficult. It's what I like is when I watch, when I used to commute into London on the train, and people would often play computer games and they would do Sudoku puzzles or crossword puzzles. And of course, once a particular puzzle gets easy, it doesn't have any fun, right? So the computer game manufacturers always go up to the next level and the next level, the next level. And you get to like level 25 on Tetris. And you look at the guy next to you on the train, he's on level 57, right? 57 levels. So we are engaged and enthusiastic when we're challenged. So if you or your staff achieve their goals, congratulate them, but don't let them drift. Set another goal or another goal or another goal and move it forward. Maybe a goal in a different area might be nice. So I would always encourage that you become, goal setting should be a habit. It should be something, it's that when you get at the top of one hill, you can see a bigger hill, you're going to climb that one. Now, if you live in the desert like many of you do, you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's and this is, by the way, what businesses do. This is why when a business, it works really hard, it achieves as an organization all its KPIs, all its metrics, all its financial targets. What do? They give you a bigger target next year. That's because it works. So incremental goal setting or stretch goals always moves forward. Maybe you should be more confident and set a slightly bigger goal or shorter timescales. All right, that's a great question, and I hope that's been of use to other. Thank you for asking that, Osama, because I think that information is useful to a lot of people who are listening and watching this today. So let's go one or two more questions.
Sure, Graham.
Yeah.
Right. So next one, I'm gonna allow Feroz Alessa. So just give me a moment, Feroz. You'll be allowed to talk. You're online right now, Feroz.
Hello.
Hello, Feroz. We can hear you.
Oh yeah. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So my question is about the KPI. So working in a very big organization, they always focus on
Feroz,
KPI.
could I interrupt you for a moment? You might have to speak up louder because I think me and Graham probably have this problem hearing you right now. A little louder, please.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Slightly better, yes.
Better?
Yes.
That's better, yeah.
Okay. So my question is about KPI.
Yeah.
So working in a very big organization, they always focus on a lot of measurements. So my question is, how can you avoid not falling in a trap of just checking the list of the measurements instead of building your technical credibility? So long-lasting learning instead of just picking the measurements that you have this year.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. If you're not careful, yes, KPIs can be simply a checklist of things to do and achieve, and you don't really learn or move forward in any way. So I would say that one of the keys to that is to, on top of the KPIs, try and set yourself or work with your supervisor or manager to set stretch goals or stretch KPIs. Now, these could be additional goals, ways of improving things, or maybe you raise the standard of the KPIs so we can improve them, and then that will use more of your skills, more of your ideas, and engage people in your team more. So if you've reached a point of resolving 25% of customer calls in the first 6 minutes, then can we make it 25% in the first 5 minutes or 4 minutes? And can we get it to 45% in the first 6 minutes? And the question then is, how can we achieve it? And that becomes like an initiative, like a project. So in addition to the KPIs, try and then add on to that a series of initiatives. And this is where the balanced scorecard works. You have the objectives, you have the measures, but you also have initiatives, programs to improve and develop the KPIs further. That could be what's missing in this one. And many managers, by the way, just want to hold it steady, which is fine, but occasionally it's like a plateau. You now need to go to the next level. Next level. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you for your question.
You think we have time for one more? Yeah.
Yes, one more, please. Yeah, and then we'll
Okay. So
yeah.
let's see. Okay. So now the next person I'm gonna allow to speak will be Mohammed Suleimani. In a few moments, I'll be unmuting you, so you can go ahead and ask a question. Mohammed, you're on right now.
Yes, hello, Mr. Gan.
Oh, Mohammed, speak a little bit louder. Yes.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yes, hello, Mr. Gan. Hello?
We can hear you, but very, very faintly, Mohammed.
No, can't.
I don't think we can hear you, Mohammed.
No, I can't.
That's all right. Mohammed,
Okay.
if you could probably drop in your question right now on the chat
Yeah.
box. I think we can address that as well.
Okay. I noticed in the list here, there's a few questions around what about impossible goals? What about impossible KPIs? Some of the books ask people about setting impossible goals that are going to change the world and, swim the Atlantic Ocean, or these sort of things. Now, I have a view, and it's my view on this. I did a keynote speech at a big conference a few years ago. And the main speaker was this guy who had sailed around the world single-handedly in a very small boat. And he told these amazing stories of his heroism and his bravery and his troubles and how he nearly died 5 times and et cetera, et cetera. And somebody asked a question of the audience, and they said, what does it take? What does it really take to achieve the goal that you've achieved? And he said, that's a good question. He said, you have to be really, really selfish. and they said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you have to be obsessed. If you're going to take on a really big goal, which everybody else in the world would think is impossible, you want to be chief executive of a big company in 20 years' time. You want to be a millionaire. You want to win a gold medal at the Olympics, right? Whatever it is, you are going to have to make huge sacrifices and be obsessive about it. And it doesn't mean to say you're going to be any happier than the rest of us who are just leading great lives with wonderful families and people we like to work with. Okay, so if you have almost like a calling, you're driven to do it, then go for it. But make sure you understand the efforts that are required, but go for it. I mean, there's no difference to that. I talk to people quite often who have these huge goals, and I tell them, right, if you want to do the goal, then you've got to be prepared to work at it relentlessly. And this reminds me of when Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Now, he's a very clever man. He was at Harvard University. This is where it costs you $500,000 to do a degree at Harvard University. He did not finish his degree, right? He's phoned his parents halfway through the course, the year into the course, and he said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to drop out of Harvard University. And they were devastated. And they said, why? He said, because I'm going to start a software company. And do you know what they said? What software? I mean, we are talking the 1970s and 80s. Nobody knew what software was, right? So what software? He left Harvard. He set a company up. He said for 7 years, he never took a holiday. He never took a day off, right? He was so determined and dedicated to what he was building with Microsoft. Nothing else in his life came even close. So set an impossible goal. If you really want to, be prepared to work for it, right? Now, even just an impossible goal doesn't have to be life-changing like that. If you said, I want to run a marathon, and you've never run before, now that's going to seem like impossible. But 3 months of running regularly, once or twice a week, you're going to get fitter. It's going to seem possible. So my last thought on that, and then we'll finish on this one, Nick, is that everything seems impossible until you've done it. And that's the magic of goal setting. That's the magic of a strategic management. That's the magic of focusing on smart objectives and KPIs. So I hope you enjoyed this session today. It's a huge subject, and please make time to read and review this and have a go at the questions, the recall questions at the end of the slide deck that you will receive. They will help you to remember and review and retain this information. And then tomorrow we've got a brand new subject on customer focus, and I look forward to seeing you all back in the training tomorrow morning as normal. So Nico and Anisha, can I hand back to yourself to close the session, please?
Yes, Graham. Thank you so much for the lovely session again. So I think
Okay.
we did a lot of coverage today, and I think particularly towards the end, we did have the opportunity to hear out the participants and their queries as well. So on that note, I think we can wrap the session up. So thank you everyone for joining in today again. We'll all see you tomorrow again at the same time. For now, thank you so much again for joining in. Have a great day. Make sure you do the recall quiz, by the way. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.